Gascoigne was one of the greatest footballing talents in the world, but he was tormented by an obsessive neurological illness.
Compulsive disorder, yeah. I do suffer a little bit from that now and again, and I think it's all down to just stress and I put myself through it. I don't know why I worry. I don't think I have anything to worry about.
His earliest days were carefree. He just wanted to play football in the streets of Newcastle's Dunstan district and at the Red Hue Boys Club.
Paul was 11 to 12-year-old when he first came. He was always a character. He was cheeky, mischievous, you know. Just full of fun, really, bubbly type of character even. Always wanting to play little practical jokes on his mates. He was a carefree person and nothing really worried him too much, you know, as a young lad.
But life in the Gascoigne home was unsettled, and when Paul was 11, his father John, a strong presence in his life, suffered a brain hemorrhage. Paul began to spend a great deal of time at the home of his best friend, Keith Spraggan.
His mum and dad were separated, you see, and I think obviously that's why he spent a lot of time with Keith. Paul found that he had to go somewhere else just to find a bit more comfort, you know, and that's where he found it with Keith, you know.
The Spraggan home and the company of Keith and his younger brother Stephen provided a sense of security. But in the summer of 1979, that was to be shattered. Accounts of the incident vary, but it seems that Paul was playing with his friends outside a corner shop not far from home. 9-year-old Stephen had tagged along with his brother. The four were hidden from the busy road by an ice cream van. Then, in the midst of their game, Stephen suddenly ran into the street, straight into the path of an oncoming car.
It was a tragedy, really, and I mean, it affected Paul because he was Keith's best mate. I'm sure he, you know, was in his mind and all that he wanted to do better than what he did, you know, to help Keith, but in them type of tragedies, what can you do? You know, very difficult.
Stephen lay dead in his brother's arms. Paul looked on, powerless.
The trauma, the witnessing of this tragic accident will be enough in a majority of people to produce significant symptoms. In Paul's case, he's already, not only at a vulnerable age, but a year before, his dad has succumbed to a brain hemorrhage. So this is a boy with more vulnerability. And the effect of those two things together, plus anything else that was going on in his life, must have been tremendous.
The accident had a profound effect on Paul. He couldn't sleep, wanted the light on all the time, hated to be alone, and when he could drop off, he was plagued by nightmares. He was given therapy, but it doesn't seem to have worked, and there was more tragedy to come. Stephen Wilson was another talented boy footballer and had been an under-14 teammate of Paul's at the Red Hue Boys Club. He was killed in an accident in a relative's building yard.
His uncle took him that day to help him out, and he actually got this, something came over and hit him on the head and actually killed him outright, and it was a tragedy because him and Paul were good mates at the time and all, you know. Two very good friends that he lost at a very young age, you know. Some inner feelings in you must come out of you, you know, and it must affect your life someday.
With certainty that it did have an effect. But all of these in life can build up, and it doesn't have to happen then, and you suffer then. It's a long drawn out, something else happens.
A couple of things happened to us with friends, accidents and that. So when I'm on my own, sometimes I think about them, and you know, I get a little bit frightened. I have some bad dreams. I have the dreams like everybody else has, when you're in some trouble and you're running away and you're at the front, and then all of a sudden you're at the back and you're running slowly and you can't scream. No, I don't like being on my own. It's because I think when you're on your own you think a lot, and I don't like to think a lot. I just like to do things spontaneously.
On tour, Gascoigne would haunt hotel corridors in desperate search of company to help him through the night. To teammates, it was yet another quirk.
Gaz always wanted the lights on, and if he couldn't get to sleep within 5 seconds, then he'd have the TV on, or have the radio on.
He's got to have company, and he's got to have people to talk to. So he would come into our room, and he'd plug into his computer, and he'd play. And it took me a while to appreciate, look, Paul, why can't you not just play that in your own room? Because he wanted company as well.
You hear a knock on the door, and Gaz would come along and say, like, is Waddler in there? Is Waddler in there? Chrissy Waddle in there? We like, no, he's not here. Go away. And Chrissy Waddle was, shh, don't tell him I'm here. Don't tell him I'm here.
You want to just, you know, get some kit, but he just wanted to keep talking and keep talking, keep talking. Then he would ring people at 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning, just to talk.
Then 5 minutes later, another knock on the door. Please, please, is Waddler there? Is Waddler there? No, go away, go away. But he was just like a lost spirit wandering up and down the corridors.
You used to have to say to the girl on reception, please, I'm begging you, don't give Gascoigne A, our room number, or B, another key. Because the Waddlers would come through the room and say, like, he's asleep now, and everybody would go, oh, thank God he's asleep. But then 5 minutes later, he'd be up knocking on the door. Is Chrissy Waddle there? Is Chrissy Waddle there? Can I come in, please, can I come in? No, Gazza, go away. And he would go away.
It wasn't just the loneliness either. There were also physical effects of his nervous condition. After the 2 accidents, friends had noticed how Gascoigne made barking noises, gave sudden yelps. Now fellow players witnessed involuntary muscle spasms.
He always had the twitch. You have a look at his twitches through football and they're unbelievable. You know, he had the shoulder one for ages and he had all the twitches, he had everything.
I don't remember anything out of the ordinary, simply because the ordinary for him was the twitching and the moving and then everything else. He couldn't just stand in line and wait. He would be twitching or shouting at people. Yeah, that's the way he coped, and I think he found it difficult.
He was an absolute nervous wreck in the dressing room. He'd be shaken, he'd have sort of all different types of twitches and everything.
His eyes would be glazed, his demeanour, he'd be trying to crack jokes, he'd be trying to be serious at the same time.
He'd always like be rolling his neck and this sort of thing, and like really nervous. And you'd look at him and you'd think, oh, crikey, can we rely on him today?
When he had a lot going on in his mind and his head, it was as if he had to be heard and he had to make noises and he had to do things, which I would imagine it was a release of certainly tension or frustration or something.
Professor Kevin Gournay is a leading authority on neurological disorders. He hasn't examined the player, but with 30 years' experience, he offers his interpretation of Gascoigne's physical jerks and noises.
I think what we're seeing is fairly classic Tourette syndrome. The abnormal involuntary movements that you see, the facial grimaces, abnormal movements of the head, neck and arms, the shouting, the utterance of noise, of grunts, that is classic Tourette syndrome.
Hello, Ollie. Hello, William. Hello, Ollie. Hello, William. Hello, Ollie. Hello, William.
To be brutally honest with you, we probably were a little bit harsh with him because we laughed, which he didn't take offence to at all, but if it was a problem, it's wrong that we laughed at it, and it probably is a problem, do you know what I mean? It was probably something, again, that was in Paul's psyche, if you like, that needed seeing to and needed attention.
I think all the twitches and the things that were happening to him, I don't think he realised, at all.
It was his way of handling a situation which he wasn't happy with, I think, probably.
Paul Gascoigne is beset by an array of mental health problems that make his achievements all the more remarkable. To understand them is to sympathise with his plight.
Each problem on its own sometimes causes people to become so despairing, so desperate they want to end their lives. That's often the presentation.
Use of the hands and a push and shove, Gascoigne being pulled away.
Now in Paul's case, you put those things together and multiply every combination of... I can only just begin to guess at how much suffering is going on inside this man.
Not surprisingly, the cheeky 16-year-old who signed for Newcastle in 1983 was known for his problem behaviour, but his extraordinary gift and vulnerability carried him through. In 1988, Gascoigne left the northeast and all he knew to travel to London. Spurs were about to pay Newcastle a £2 million transfer fee, making him England's most expensive player. Even with that price tag, The childlike charm of the 21-year-old was irresistible to manager Terry Venables. It lent a special atmosphere to the contract negotiations.
I'd bought in this giant Teddy Ruxpin for his birthday, that talking bear with a tape in it, and he insisted on talking to Terry through the bear. And Terry just couldn't believe it. You know, there was this £1 million footballer just talking to him through a talking, cuddly bear.
He had that quality, I think, of like a little boy lost if you're not careful, and you wanted to make sure nothing happened to him, and you wanted to pinch his cheek or, you know, be affectionate, you know, sort of tactile towards him. And he had such a great grin and laugh.
It's a fresh start for me again, and to show people that, you know, 2 million, nobody's worth 2 million, but I've got to get out there and show people that I can be worth close to that.
And that doesn't worry you, that daunting prospect?
Not really, it doesn't worry, you know, it's just look after myself, really, that's a worrying thing.
Looking after himself was a challenge. He moved out to the leafy Hertfordshire suburb of Dobbs Weir and put down roots. But he'd call Venables at all hours with questions about dripping taps or gas bills.
He is worth the trouble. And someone with that talent and the nature he was made him worth that trouble.
Is Gascoigne going to have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, I say! Brilliant!
Well, it was clear that there was a very special bond between Terry Venables and Paul Gascoigne. He kind of knew how to look after him and say the right things to him and let him be Paul Gascoigne.
There was only one other British club at which Gascoigne played world-class football. When he moved to Glasgow Rangers in the summer of 1995, manager Walter Smith also realised that if he was to deliver the goods, the childlike midfielder needed special care.
Anybody who managed him, to get the very best out of him on the field, had to have a close relationship with him. More an off-the-pitch one where you had to show a support for him and a closeness to him.
Discipline-wise, when Paul overstepped the limit and was wrong, make no mistake about it, Walter Smith came down on him like no man ever came down on him.
There's Gascoigne though, can he produce some magic? Still it's Gascoigne! Oh yes!
Gascoigne needed boundaries, and Smith set them for him. Rangers was a hard-drinking team, but there was a total ban 48 hours before the game.
Paul came in one day, and the gaffer just looked at him and said, "Are you drinking last night?" I think he'd heard.
He admitted it right away, which then, as Paul does do, breaks down in tears, immediately thinking that he had let me down. And of course, I had no other option than to send him home, miss the game.
And that would absolutely kill Paul, because I actually embarrassed him that he'd let the manager down.
He would be really worried if he was in trouble, absolutely petrified, I mean mortified, if he upset, you know, the people that were in charge of him or the people that he respected. He'd be on the toilet for hours beforehand if he was getting the dressing down, that's for sure. He was like a little schoolboy in that respect.
I think that was one of those occasions where he himself realised that we were there to try and help him and try and protect him, because, you know, I realised after about 2 or 3 months that he was one of those lads that he really couldn't help himself, Paul.
I think Paul Gascoigne is a person that finds it very difficult, certainly to cope from day to day. And I think if you look at where he was successful, he always had a very strong father figure alongside him, looking out for him. But at the end of the day, you can't look out for Paul Gascoigne 24 hours of the day.
He needed someone to tell him what to do and when to do it. There are times when if he was allowed to have his freedom off the pitch and have it for too long and too often, and that's when he really did go mad.
In 1990, England almost got to the World Cup final. Paul Gascoigne's tears won the nation's affection and started Gazzamania, a pressure he couldn't endure and tried to escape from through drink. At just 23, he'd already reached the zenith of his career. After Italia 90, his addictions would begin to destroy it.